Hey, Larken Rose here. And plenty of people are kind of worried about the future right now, and worried about the present for that matter. With all the mayhem going on, it's kind of nice to see so much awareness about police brutality, but then you get the protests and you get riots and you get the government doing infiltrators and instigating things and doing their creepy fascist stuff. So you have all that, and then on top of that, there's the this overblown, ridiculous plague fear-mongering and all the authoritarian garbage they're trying to do related to that, of seeing how much they can control everybody. And you have a bunch of people mindlessly going along with whatever they say, but a bunch of other people saying, this is ridiculous, and resisting. You even have some of their own enforcers resisting, some of their own courts ruling that the politicians aren't allowed to do that, politicians fighting with each other. So it's a big mayhemy mess, and a lot of people are rightfully concerned with what the future holds because a bunch of the government solutions are causing all kinds of problems with the economy and everything else. But I have some good news, which is that right now is one of the best times to try to get people to question the concept of authority because of everything going on. Basically, the government is making people think about these things. It's making people think, well, at what point are we just going to disobey? At what point do they not have the right to do this to us, and we have the right to just say no and disobey and not do as we're told? And so people are already on the brink of thinking about these things, and I'm hearing from more and more people that this discussion is happening all over the place, and people they've talked to before, statists they've talked to, are suddenly coming up to them and saying, the things you were talking about before, like no government, like what? So this is a great opportunity, in addition to all the reasons it's ridiculous and horrible and scary. And somebody asked me to make a number of radio spots, which are basically tiny little doses of voluntarism or anarchism, whichever you want to call it. And so I made 7 of them. And in this, I'm going to play all 7 of them. I'm also going to include a link so anybody can download the WAV file versions of any or all of these things and spread them wherever you like. That includes if you want to pay to have them air somewhere, or if there's somewhere that they'll air for free, or whatever, or you can just share them around. And so 4 of them are just 30 seconds long. 3 of them are a minute long. So they're, added together. They only add up to 5 minutes or something. And so it's tiny little doses. You can only plant a seed with these things. And I've often, had people do the mental exercise. If you had 30 seconds to talk to the whole world, what would you say? If you're a voluntarist and you're looking out at the statist world. And for a lot of us, that's difficult and a challenge. I don't know. There's so much to try to tell them about. There's so much to try to get them to understand. So these are just little doses of hopefully getting them to start looking at something they've never considered. So anyway, I'll start playing them here. I'll say a little bit about each one. But so here's the first one to just give you an example.
And now, something to think about.
We're taught as children that obedience to authority is a virtue and that doing as you're told makes you a good person. And all of the worst tyrannies in history depended upon people believing that. In reality, being moral means following your conscience and doing the right thing even when authority tells you not to.
From Larken Rose, author of The Most Dangerous Superstition.
So that's one of them. Now, a funny thing, these are all, that one and the other ones I'm going to play, have all now been running for 2, maybe coming up on 3 weeks on a talk show down in South Carolina, a conservative talk show. I think it's the one that comes right after Rush Limbaugh down there or something. I'm not exactly sure because I don't listen to that. But somebody I know paid to have these run as ads down there, which I think is outstanding. So imagine, wouldn't that be hysterical and fun in between the nonstop stream of statist garbage that you hear everywhere to hear these bits and pieces and know that lots of other people are hearing these little doses of actual freedom in between all the state-worshipping garbage there is. So anyway, here's another one.
And now, something to think about.
All governments legalize aggression and extortion, but only when they do it. It's still illegal if you do it. Every law is a politician's command backed by a threat of violence. Get caught disobeying and you will be robbed or caged by their enforcers. And most people assume that that is how things must be. It's not.
From Larken Rose, author of The Most Dangerous Superstition.
So again, these have been playing on a station down in South Carolina, and the hysterical thing is the person who ran them let me know that the talk show host was so triggered by them, he felt the need to talk about them. And one of the things he said is, this is not necessarily the opinions of this host or the blah, blah, blah. But it's hysterical. They're giving, he's giving free attention to them. And it shows the power that planting little seeds can have when somebody on his own show, that he can't even just ignore the commercials, because how many people pay attention to the commercials, that he has to respond to them. And because he's, a big law and order conservative, as far as I've heard. So imagine these things running on a show like that, and imagine the audience of that sort of talk show hearing these bits and pieces and going, whoa, and having to think about it. So here's another one.
And now, something to think about.
It's wrong to start a fight. You have the right to defend against aggressors, but you never have the right to be the aggressor. We all know that. Unfortunately, what we don't all know is that having a badge and a uniform and calling the aggression law does not make it right.
From Larken Rose, author of The Most Dangerous Superstition.
Now keep in mind, these are running in the middle of a political campaign. And that's why I especially like the fact that this next one ran, and it was probably, I don't know this for sure, but in all likelihood, it was probably between a couple of political ads for people saying, vote for me, vote for me, vote for me. So it's so refreshing and amusing to me to picture those, that type of ad of them trying to get people to put them into power, and then this suddenly shows up.
And now, something to think about.
A lot of Americans wear it as a badge of honor to be law-abiding taxpayers. And yet when watching movies, those same Americans cheer for the anti-establishment rebels who fight against political power. Why do you suppose that is? And where would you draw the line? When do you think that people should stop obeying the dictates of so-called authorities? Or would you comply with absolutely anything that the politicians decided to call law? If this discussion makes you uncomfortable, you're not alone. It's certainly not a topic you'll hear discussed by politicians or media pundits. They're okay with you bickering over which politicians should rule you, but the last thing they want is for you to decide that you don't owe any of them your loyalty, allegiance, or obedience.
From Larken Rose, author of The Most Dangerous Superstition.
Oh, also, these started running just in time to run this next one on July 4th, on Independence Day, which it references, which makes that extra fun, too, for the flag wavers listening to the show. So here's another one.
And now, something to think about.
The American culture is somewhat schizophrenic. On the one hand, we're taught that being a good person means that you obey the law and play by the rules. And yet America also has a strong tradition of believing that when so-called lawmakers and rule makers are corrupt and power-happy and overstep their bounds, then the good people disobey and resist. We even have a national holiday celebrating that, Independence Day. So, is obedience to authority a virtue? Do good people just do as they are told? Or do good people decide for themselves when it is time to disobey and resist? If you've never thought about this before, now might be the time to start.
From Larken Rose, author of The Most Dangerous Superstition.
So again, these are all just about planting seeds, and then each one mentions the most dangerous superstition at the end just by saying it. It's because I didn't want them to come across as like an advertisement for a book. I wanted each one to be a little self-contained dose of voluntarism. And if it gets people's attention and gets their curiosity, it points them to something else, which is the most dangerous superstition. And it's working. The response has been amazing. It's working. It's getting, the people listening to these shows go, maybe he has a point, and looking it up. And so that's, sometimes that's all it takes, is planting a tiny little seed in the right place at the right time. And right now is the right time, because people see just lunacy going on all over the place. And a lot of people are now questioning, like, at what point do we get to disobey it, like I said before. So it's like, I love the fact that random people, normal people out in the world living their lives, are suddenly getting hit in the ears with things like this.
And now, something to think about.
If it's wrong for you to do a certain thing, is it any better for you to ask someone else to do the same thing for you? No, obviously not. So, do you vote for politicians to do things that you know you would have no right to do yourself? If so, stop it.
From Larken Rose, author of The Most Dangerous Superstition.
So again, wouldn't it be fun for you to hear these on the radio? And even more fun to know that a bunch of other people who've never thought about these things and never heard of these ideas are hearing this, just sort of, interjected into their daily lives where they're going about their normal business, and suddenly they're like, wait, what did he say? So here's one more, last but not least.
And now, something to think about.
Most of the theft, assault, and murder in the world is committed not by individuals acting on their own malice, but by individuals obeying the orders of governments. The worst atrocities in history were legal and were the result of a very small number of truly nasty people acquiring positions of power, combined with a very large number of average people who viewed those few people as authority and felt obligated to obey their commands. It has been the law-abiding taxpayers who have funded and empowered every oppressive regime in history. No, the belief in authority does not make people good. Instead, it tricks otherwise good people into tolerating or even proudly condoning legalized injustice.
From Larken Rose, author of The Most Dangerous Superstition.
So that's it. I just wanted to post them. I'm going to give a link in the description below to a Dropbox folder that will have the WAV files of all 7 of these individually. And you can share them wherever you want, and don't edit them or change them, but otherwise you can put them wherever you want, post them. If you can get them broadcast in your town, that's outstanding. But whatever you want to do with them as just a way to plant tiny little seeds. And there's also the advantage of, if you're used to talking to statists and they're used to hearing you and being annoyed by the fact that you believe something they don't, it actually is helpful to have another voice saying it for you. And so hopefully these will come in handy for that. But feel free to do what you want with them. And imagine, like I talked about how fun it is for, voluntarists to hear this showing up in mainstream, and knowing that statists are hearing it in mainstream. Imagine cops and politicians also hearing these spots showing up in mainstream all over the place. I would love to see that happen. So if you want to help out, go for it. If you can find any use for them and share them wherever, have at it.